Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Characters. Henry Higgins is a professor who loves to record and research on sounds of people. Colonel Pickering, the author of Spoken Sanskrit, shares a similar passion. While Higgins is impolite and bully in his way towards women, Pickering is a genuine gentleman. They meet in the rain one night at Covent Garden. Eliza Doolittle is introduced as a flower girl with poor English skills on street where both Higgins and Pickering were present. The current scene opens at 11 a.m. in Higgins' laboratory at Wimpole Street. Higgins, as he shuts the last drawer. Well, I think that's the whole show. Pickering, it's really amazing. I haven't taken half of it in, you know. Higgins, would you like to go over any of it again? Pickering, rising and coming to the fireplace, where he plants himself with his back to the fire. No, thank you, not now. I'm quite done up for this morning. Higgins, following him and standing beside him on his left, tired of listening to sounds. Pickering, yes, it is a fearful strain. I rather fancied myself because I can pronounce 24 distinct vowel sounds, but your 130 beat me. I can't hear a bit of difference between most of them. Higgins, chuckling and going over to the piano to eat sweets. Oh, that comes with practice. You hear no difference at first, but you keep on listening, and presently you find they're all as different as A from B. Mr. Pierce looks in. She is Higgins' housekeeper. What's the matter? Mrs. Pierce, hesitating, evidently perplexed. A young woman wants to see you, sir. Higgins, a young woman? What does she want? Mrs. Pierce, well, sir, she says you will be glad to hear her. When you know what she's come about. She is quite a common girl, sir. Very common indeed. I should have sent her away, only I thought perhaps you wanted to see her to talk into your machines. I hope I have not done wrong. But really you see such queer people sometimes. You will excuse me, I'm sure, sir. Higgins, oh, that's all right, Miss Pierce. Has she an interesting accent? Mrs. Pierce, oh, something grateful, sir. Really, I don't know how you can take an interest in it. Higgins, to Pickering, let's have her up. Show her up, Mrs. Pierce. He rushes across to his working table and picks out a cylinder to use on the phonograph. Mrs. Pierce, only half resigned to it. Very well, sir. It's for you to say. She goes downstairs. Higgins, this is rather a bit of luck. I'll show you how I make records. We'll set her talking and then we'll get her on the phonograph so that you can turn her on as often as you like with the written transcript before you. Mrs. Pierce, this is the young woman, sir. The flower girl enters in state. She has a hat with 3 ostrich feathers, orange, sky blue and red. She has a neat cleaned apron and the shoddy coat has been tidied a little. The pathos of this deplorable figure with its innocent vanity and consequential air touches Pickering, who had already straightened himself in the presence of Mrs. Pierce. But as to Higgins, the only distinction he makes between men and women is that when he is neither bullying nor exclaiming to heaven against some feather-wet cross, he quacks his woman as a child quacks its nurse when it wants to get anything out of her. Higgins, brusquely recognizing her with unconcealed disappointment and at once baby-like making an intolerable grievance of it. Why, this is the girl I jotted down last night. She is no use. I've got all the records I want of the Listen Grove lingo, and I'm not going to waste another cylinder on it. To the girl, be off with you. I don't want you. The flower girl, don't you be so saucy. You ain't heard what I come for yet. To Mrs. Pierce, who is waiting at the door for further instruction. Did you tell him I come in a taxi? Mrs. Pierce, nonsense, girl. What do you think a gentleman like Mr. Higgins cares what you came in? The flower girl, oh, we are proud. He ain't above giving lessons, not him. I heard him say so. Well, I ain't come here to ask for any compliment, and if my money is not good enough, I can go elsewhere. Higgins, good enough for what? The flower girl, good enough for you. Now you know, don't you? I'm come to have lessons, I am, and to pay for them too. Make no mistake. Higgins, stupid. Well, recovering his breath with a gasp. What do you expect me to say to you? The flower girl. Well, if you was a gentleman, you might ask me to sit down, I think. Don't I tell you I am bringing you business? Higgins. Pickering, shall we ask this baggage to sit down or shall we throw her out of the window? The flower girl, running away in terror to the piano where she turns at bay. Oh, wounded and whimpering. I won't be called a baggage when I've offered to pay like any lady. Motionless, the two men stared at her from the other side of the room, amazed. Pickering, gently. What is it you want, my girl? The flower girl. I want to be a lady in a flower shop instead of selling at the corner of Tottenham Court Road. But they won't take me unless I can talk more gently. He said he could teach me. Well, here I am ready to pay him, not asking any favor. And he treats me as if I was dirt. Mrs. Pierce. How can you be such a foolish, ignorant girl as to think you could afford to pay Mr. Higgins? The flower girl. Why shouldn't I? I know what lessons cost as well as you do, and I am ready to pay. Higgins. How much? The flower girl, coming back to him, triumphant. Now you're talking. I thought you'd come of it when you saw the chance of getting back a bit of what you chucked at me last night. Confidentially. You'd had a drop in, hadn't you? Higgins. But temporarily. Sit down. The flower girl. Oh, if you're going to make a compliment of it. Higgins, thundering at her. Sit down. Mr. Pierce, severely. Sit down, girl. Do as you are told. She places this stray chair near the hearthrug between Higgins and Pickering and stands behind it waiting for the girl to sit down. The flower girl. Oh! She stands half rebellious, half bewildered. Pickering. Very cautious. Won't you sit down? Lisa. Don't mind if I do. She sits down. Pickering returns to the hearthrug. Higgins. What's your name? The flower girl. Lisa Dolittle. Higgins. Declaiming gravely. Eliza, Elizabeth, Betsy and Bess, they went to the woods to get a bird's nest. Pickering. They found a nest with 4 eggs in it. Higgins. They took 1 apiece and left 3 in it. They laugh heartily at their own wit. Lisa. Oh, don't be silly. Mr. Pierce. You mustn't speak to the gentleman like that. Lisa. Well, why won't he speak sensible to me? Higgins. Come back to business. How much do you propose to pay me for the lessons? Lisa. Oh, I know what's right. A lady friend of mine gets French lessons for 18 pence an hour from a real French gentleman. Well, you wouldn't have the face to ask me the same for teaching me my own language as you would for French. So I won't give more than a shilling. Take it or leave it. Higgins, walking up and down the room, rattling his keys and his cash in his pockets. You know, Pickering, if you consider a shilling not as a simple shilling but as a percentage of this girl's income, it works out as fully equivalent to 60 or 70 guineas from a millionaire. Pickering, how so? Higgins, figure it out. A millionaire has about £150 a day. She earns about half a crown. Lisa, who told you I only? Higgins, continuing. She offering me 2/5 of a day's income for a lesson. 2/5 of a millionaire's income for a day would be somewhere about £60. It's handsome. By George, it's enormous. It's the biggest offer I ever had. Lisa, rising terrified. £60? What are you talking about? I never offered you £60. Where would I get? Higgins, hold your tongue. Lisa, weeping. But I ain't got £60. Oh. Mrs. Pierce, don't cry, you silly girl. Sit down. Nobody is going to touch your money. Higgins, somebody is going to touch you with a broomstick if you don't stop sniveling. Sit down. Lisa, obeying slowly. Oh, one would think you was my father. Higgins, if I decide to teach you, I'll be worse than 2 fathers to you. Here, he offers her his silk handkerchief. Lisa, what's this for? Higgins, to wipe your eyes, to wipe any part of your face that feels moist. Remember, that's your handkerchief and that's your sleeve. Don't mistake the one for the other if you wish to become a lady in a shop. Lisa, utterly bewildered, stares helplessly at him. Mrs. Pierce, it's no use talking to her like that. Mr. Higgins, she doesn't understand you. Besides, you are quite wrong. She doesn't do it that way at all. She takes the handkerchief. Lisa, snatching it. Gee, you give me that handkerchief? He gave it to me, not to you. Pickering, laughing. He did. I think it must be regarded as her property, Mrs. Pierce. Mrs. Pierce, serve you right, Mr. Higgins. Pickering, Higgins, I'm interested. What about the ambassador's garden party? I'll see what the greatest teacher alive, if you make that good. I'll bet you all the expenses of the experiment you can't do it. And I'll pay for the lessons. Lisa, oh, you are real good. Thank you, Captain. Higgins, tempted, looking at her. It's almost irresistible. She's so deliciously low, so horribly dirty. Lisa, protesting extremely. Oh! Please like, share and comment on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.